Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I am Juliet Oloch from the Africa Research and Impact Network, and I'm moderating the session today. We'll be starting at exactly 5 minutes past 3 p.m. Feel free to grab a cup of hot tea as we wait for other participants to join us. In the meantime, if you'd like to follow the session in French, we do have interpretation for today's session. Kindly tune into the French option in your interpretation button. Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for joining the ARIN review session, August 4th edition. We are happy that you've joined us today. My name is Juliet Oloch. I am the ARIN Fellowship Manager and a Research Associate at ARIN. Please feel free to let me know where you're joining us from and who you are in terms of your name, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Apart from that, I would like to let us know that we have interpretation from French to English. To all our Anglophone participants, please feel free to tune into the French option to be able to listen and follow the discussions in French. Just before I introduce our speaker of the day, I would like to bring to your attention about the ARIN reviews. What is the ARIN reviews and why do we have ARIN reviews? So over the past few decades, we have witnessed enormous research from the African continent, but there's little in continent learning, and there's nearly no think tanks that promote peer learning in the continent. The ARIN network, through the ARIN Reviews program, in partnership with the ARIN Fellowship Program, bring together different researchers and scholars and founders, policymakers, both from the private and public sector, every Friday to discuss different research findings, but also to share some of the innovations in the general African landscape. So we do this every Friday from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. in the East African time. And if you'd like to be part of this team by making a presentation or participating in our reviews every Friday, kindly feel free to reach out to me directly. Our speaker of the day is Mr. ABUGA Justin, and I will just read his biography in a bit before I welcome him to take us through today's session. Mr. Justin ABUGA is an award-winning social impact entrepreneur, and he's the CEO and founder of ECOBORA company, which is the first green energy company that is offering African schools with solar cooking stoves and saving them 100% firewood costs. He's using green energy as a catalyst for poverty alleviation, and their mission is to build resilient and empowered communities that can thrive. Due to their impact-based work, Mr. ABUGA has received several awards and prizes, including recognition from the Challenge, Solar Impact Foundation, or the Environment Award 2021. He has attended several entrepreneurship bootcamps and trainings, which include the Young African Leadership Initiative, which is yearly, flagged by the President, retired President Barack Obama, and he has 7 years of experience working in the green energy space. He's a believer in status quo disruption, using innovation, technology, and sustainability, with passion of working with rural marginalized women and youths towards realizing their economic potential. Mr. Justin ABUGA, we are so humbled and privileged to have you join us this afternoon. And at this point, I would like to welcome you to share with us about ECOBORA and embracing clean cooking in Africa, leaving no one behind. Thank you, and you're welcome.
Thank you, Juliet, for the good introduction. Yeah, just to check, can I share my screen or?
Yes, please, you can.
Thank you. Yep, are you able to see my screen on your hand, Juliet, the rest?
Yes, Justin, I can see your screen.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, allow me to introduce myself briefly. As Julius mentioned, my name is ABUGA Justin. We're based in Kenya, and we're working on the green energy space as a business. And we've been doing so for the past 7 years. For these 7 years, we've been seeing some gaps and opportunities in the green cooking side of development, and specifically on SDG number 7. Yeah, that's access to affordable energy. One of the biggest theme which has been really forthcoming is the inequalities in access to energy. And when I mention that, it's because although we are a green energy company, while providing these solutions to customers, we discover that behind energy poverty is real poverty. And that's why there's energy poverty. And for us, really, we found that very interesting in that respect, because what that means on our scale or on our perspective is we can never win over energy poverty without winning poverty. I think that was really, really outstanding for us. And that's why today, I'll just share with you briefly what we do and why we do what we do, just to excite, with the idea of exciting some conversations, some thoughts, provoke some ideas here and there around cooking energies in schools in Kenya, particularly in Kenya. And that's why my presentation will be around a topic called leaving no one behind. So I'll be very brief, just to ensure We'll make it very interactive. In case you have a question, maybe there'll be more room for that just shortly after the presentation. So today's presentation, particularly, it's called Leaving No One Behind. And just to bring into context, I'll just go forward with the presentation. As you all might know, particularly in Kenya, the bigger picture of Africa, we have like 4 million schools in Africa, but particularly in Kenya, we have like 400,000 schools. These schools are really providing food for students. And in that exchange, these schools are using firewood. And on average, one school can spend up to $30,000 per year to purchase firewood. This is very expensive if you picture about schools or facilities or institutions which are located, in capital, be away from the capital. Picture that, and they are really cash strained. So really running a school, if you're a school principal or a school owner and ensuring you feed your students, is a very hard ball to balance, right? Because of the high cost of firewood, which like in Kenya, was really much fueled by the ban in logging. And so this makes cooking in schools very expensive. And yet, there's no alternatives for these schools. The reason being, as I mentioned, these schools serve from between 100 students to up to 7,000 students. So because of the scale of cooking, innovation is rare, it is hard for these spaces, and it's complex, and it's very complex and very expensive to think about innovation in this space. And because of these energy needs of consuming at least up to 700 tons per year. So there's been a massive emission from the school kitchens. The problem is we don't have enough data backing up this, because we have data from the household emission levels, right? So we don't have data. It's a very open space, to say the least, in that perspective. And because of all those problems, this adds to the huge maintenance cost, which goes to these traditional firewood boilers, which has been used from generation to generations in our schools, facilities, or even institutions. And for us as ECOBORA, this is now where we come in to try and solve this challenge of giving these schools, which have been left behind, as I mentioned, with alternative solutions to try and, not only reduce the cost of cooking, but also try to ensure that they can compete with their counterparts who are privileged, just to say. And in this quest, we have 3 key objectives in this space. And first one is we're trying to reduce emissions from using firewood, right? And this is because, as I mentioned, these boilers are very huge. They emit up to 700 tons of CO2 per year. So our first objective is to replace these boilers and reduce their emissions, right? Secondly, we want to leverage on energy to provide food whenever the school wants to cook, right? Anytime the school has an energy needs, we need to ensure that our solution will be able to do this. And this is being supported by our solution, which provides thermal storage, which can be able to store energy for up to 2 days without sunlight. In that sense, we'll be able to provide energy on those scales, right? And the third objective is to maintain and respect the cooking culture. So basically, when our schools continue cook as they cook, the difference will be the technology. So the same food, same taste, and same kind of culture. So to ensure we don't disrupt people's way of lives in those communities. The last objective is to collect, transfer, and verify CO2 emissions and track them in all those institutions. Because this will be very key, as I will share later in the slides, towards scaling up such innovations in those underserved schools. To the exciting part. So this is an overview of the technology. As I mentioned, it's 100% solar powered. And it can store energy up to 2 days, whenever there's rainy days or whenever there's no sunlight. Just to mention, take you through how basically we're able to power the kitchens. Yeah, you can see the bottom right. We have the solar collectors. That's what we use to collect the sun's energy. So in this scenario, rather than using solar PV, we're using solar concentrators. This helps us to generate thermal energy. And this thermal energy is pumped to the heat accumulator. All these parts are outside the kitchen. And the purpose of the heat accumulator is to store the energy until cooking energy is in the kitchen, and even to store the additional energy to be used at night or during rainfall seasons. Yeah, then this energy from the accumulator goes to the heat stove, which is located inside the kitchen. This is where the actual cooking of your food, your githeri, your gal, your rice really takes place. Then notably, there are some other few components of this solution. The first one is the expansion vessel. So basically, this is just like a safety mechanism whereby whenever there's a lot of energy building up, pressure, because this system can contain up to 8 bars of pressure of energy up to 160 degrees. So this vessel acts just like an excess, exit for that energy is building up, right? Then lastly, it's a closed system. So nothing goes in, nothing goes out. That's the efficiency of the system. Lastly is the PV system. This solar PV system, the small PV system, is used to pump the water on the system and even to be able to rotate the collectors to ensure maximum absorption of the sun's energy. And lastly, as I mentioned, are the communication and sensors. Basically, just to ensure that you're able to monitor the stove, its performance, wherever you are using your mobile phone. Also, this can be used to be able to calculate and communicate the carbon reduction of the solution. So basically, this is just a brief description of how it works around providing energy in these kitchens using 100% solar energy. Yeah, just to give a better picture of the components of the heat stove and the storage. So as you can see, a few images of the stove, a P&I diagram, but also the actual diagrams of the far left, the black one used to store the hot water. Yeah, and just next to it is the pots, cooking pots. It can vary in size, it can be bigger or smaller according to the client's needs or your wish, right? So basically, this is just a more diagram showing you on how the solution realigns and how it's engineered, around leveraging thermal energy to cut down the need of using firewood and this close. Yeah. So the last component where we get more questions is around the solar thermal. So as I mentioned, we're using solar concentrators rather than using solar PV. So it's more of generating thermal energy, heat. That's why we're using these concentrators from a Spanish company provider. We're able to easily get a system of up to 17.5 kilowatts in one school, only requiring an area of 32 meters square. So the beauty about using PV, using thermal concentrators, is because they're very efficient. Efficiency of 85%, PV efficiency goes to up to 25%. So that's why we really prefer the thermal concentrators. Another aspect is the space utility. These schools, most of them don't have space. So going the route of using concentrators gives an edge because of the less area required to provide energy. And these concentrators, you're able to go to up to 300 degrees Celsius in terms of temperature and up to 30 bars of pressure. That's huge. That can really run a big food processing factory if you think about it in those perspectives. Yeah. So briefly, I'll just give you one case study. This is Kinakoni School case study. Kinakoni is a school located in Kenya, Eastern Kenya, in a place called Kitui. So this school is a primary school that's been facing a lot of issues around sourcing firewood, being in a very arid area, that's in Kitui. And because of that, firewood is very expensive. And that's why students are required to bring firewood to school for them to get food. Sometimes there's not enough firewood to power their boilers, so there's no food, right? Punishing those who brought their firewood to school. So that's something really worth noting down. And the school, as I mentioned, has like 400 students. This school estimate can consume up to 15 kilowatts of the system, right? So this is their facility, the kitchen, particularly the kitchen. Being a day school, there's more staff from there powered by solar panel, but particularly this is their kitchen. There's one cook, 2 cooking pots, trying to feed for these students. And 50% of the time, the kitchen is not running because either there's no food or there's no firewood. That's why this kind of school really stands out, because students come to school to get food as a motivation to learn. And some of them really depend on their school to get food. So if there's no food in school, most likely they might sleep hungry, because from their homes, food is really a big problem in that perspective. So yeah, that's like the cook. This is the firewood we saw students collecting, bring to school. That's the boiler, very traditional, inefficient, high cost maintenance boiler over there. And because of such solutions, students are really suffering, and schools are struggling to feed these students because of the mismatch, the innovation, and the fuel resources. And that's why we as ECOBORA, we think like these are very green space, which needs a lot of research, a lot of innovations, and a lot of support in regards to embracing the clean cooking, because we feel like this space has been left behind. If you compare this to the household market or space, there's a huge gap between these two spaces. Yet these schools, they're the biggest consumers of firewood to begin with before the households, right? And if you think about it in this context, they used to feed the students. So we see like this space, these schools are really left behind, and hopefully we might begin conversations around how can we be able to bridge this gap between these two spaces, because you can never separate these two spaces, as I mentioned, because some students, when they feed in school, they're okay to go home and sleep until the next day. Some schools, students are able to be provided with clean water, clean drinking water, and this water they take back to their homes for consumption. So in essence, these two spaces are really complex and very intertwined, if you think about it. And that's why we can never achieve the sustainable cooking in our household level while forgetting about the institutions or these schools or these communities' kitchens or settings where these students or members of the communities benefit from in the whole scale. Yeah, so to this school, with our staff, we anticipate a big environmental impact. As I mentioned, with the 400 students being provided food every day. So if they switch to ECOBORA stove, it means we'll be able to save at least 80 tons of CO2 emission per year only from this kitchen. Those are big numbers if you think about it in terms of the CO2 reduction emission. And at the same time, there'll be a reduction or a saving of 0.12 hectares of deforestation. So imagine 80 tons of CO2 or 0.12 hectares of forest is what is required for one school. So try to paint a picture around, raise this to at least 400,000 schools in Kenya or 4 million in Africa. Yeah, so that's really a big space, which we feel like is really underlooked, yet it's one really needed space in terms of innovation or reduction of CO2 emissions. Yeah? So basically, that's what our solution is trying to do currently. We hope in the next 5-10 years, we'll be able to reduce our estimates and try to invest back the benefits of the CO2 reduction back to this school. Because I mentioned it's a very needy school from infrastructure standpoint, right? Yeah, from the social impacts, with this innovation, just like in all the schools, there's a health benefit around embracing solar cooking. It's because think about currently, cooks are spending up to 15 hours in a kitchen providing food. It's like a small factory. And the reason is because of the inefficiency in terms of the boilers available in the kitchen. But when this is replaced with firewood boilers, solar boilers, so saving cooking time is reduced by half. There'll be no emission level, and thus really the general effects of the kitchen workers will be improved, because they'll be able to have enough time to spend with their families, because they no longer need to sleep or spend early mornings or late nights in these kitchens trying to cook food for their students. Yeah. Second impact is we'll be able to introduce and foster renewable energies in the rural context. And as I mentioned, the rural markets or rural schools, they're considered risky markets. By targeting these clients and showing that schools can be able to adapt and embrace these innovations, we open up a new market, not only for schools, but even for the B2C, business to customer, innovation tailored products. Because that notion of seeing rural communities as risky communities or as unadaptable to innovations can change by having these systems running those marginalized markets out there. The fourth impact is local development. Like for our side, in every school, we need like 35 part-time unskilled laborers who come handy to support us with this installation. And secondly, we also have to train the youths and the women there to support us with the installation and even maintenance and repairs to ensure that whenever the system is running, the system can be maintained. And also, whenever there's a breakdown, this nearby fast-hand response to respond and ensure that students can be able to run smoothly by accessing their meals on time. Yeah, and the last impact is a better working environment, because there will be no longer students no longer having to go to the forest to collect firewood, bring this to school, and also the school environments will be reduced emissions. This would be like a proud project or innovation for these communities or schools, making them, strive forward towards focusing on their education. Yeah. Innovation also comes with a challenge, which is sustainability and which is affordability. And that's why our target schools fit to a criteria of those left behind. And the reason is because all these innovations are very, very expensive, and somebody has to step in and bridge these gaps. Right? And for us, we think the best way from our desk, we'll be able to introduce solutions to schools, particularly in Kenya, is a combination of different aspects of sustainable financing. And the first one, which is really, really key, is carbon credits. Yeah, by leveraging on the communication and the smart sensors in the stores, and be able to ensure that carbon financing comes through from the carbon credits, which can be blended by the school's financing, right? And this will be also supported by an RBF. So basically, having an hybrid model seems to be the way to be able to sustainably deploy this innovation to these marginalized markets, and also ensure that they're sustainable, they can grow, beyond the Kenyan and Eastern African markets to even other African markets out there. Yeah. Yeah, we have also done our market research in-house. Just to give you a few numbers, pointers, just in Kenya alone, we have like 12,400 high schools, boarding schools. That's what we are trying to target, boarding schools which are high schools, as our serviceable market. And student growth rate has been growing, and the rate is 6.5% every year. So there'll be an increase of students, yet the same cooking facilities are not expanding. Yet the same cooking innovations are not being upgraded. So there will be really, really a huge gap on that. And the average price of firewood per ton in these schools, we found this to be at $50. Yeah. The CO2 consumption per year, per student per year, as I mentioned, was 0.33 tons. So basically, these are a few of our insights we got in our research. And averagely, these schools are really in dire need of cooking solution. 99% of them are using firewood with the same traditional boilers, which are very inefficient and which are making the cost of energy in these kitchens to really skyrocket. Yeah, so these are just numbers to put them out there for your knowledge. Yeah, and speaking about those numbers and gaps, in this space, which now comes to what can we do collectively in our own spaces? There's a lot of gaps and opportunities in this space, as I mentioned, I alone, because these communities or these schools have been neglected in all ways around, from the innovations, from the research itself to the implementation themselves. So one key gap or opportunity, things which collectively we need to find out and clearly communicate out, is a cooking technologies in school, because there's less information happening on what's done where. In Kenya, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, we need to share this information out on what are other schools doing to be able to bridge this energy challenge schools are facing, right? Yep. And then these innovations or technologies can be able to be showcased with their point of trying to find collaborations around the providers and find ways, meaningful ways and sustainable ways to grow them, to impact other schools or community kitchens or facilities, just to mention, depending on the interest. And the second one is the amount of firewood consumed. We need to do a lot of research and fact finding around the specific amount of firewood consumed per school, per region, per category of school, day school, boarding school, preschool, high school, junior high school. We need to find this data because this data will be really meaningful to attract attention to this space. Because if there's no data, there'll be no attention. If there's no attention, people will not care about this problem. So I think that's is key really in finding that information. We also need to paint out a picture of the firewood value chain for schools. I'm aware this has been done a lot for charcoal, for household cooking, charcoal, value chain for household cooking. And I feel like there's no better of creating the pain point of running a school relying on firewood rather than using a firewood value chain. So this is another gap which should be painted clearly to bring an effort from stakeholders and other involved parties to be able to really see the dire situation of these facilities. We also need to begin a map out, identify and calculate the emissions in facilities. There can be school kitchens, can be hospitals, government institutions like barracks, universities, just to name a few. We need to have this data because if we don't have data, then we don't have something to work against. You know what I mean? We need to have this data for us to be able to align our goals and objectives towards reduction of those numbers. If you think about, in this case, it's carbon emission, right? And at the same time, we also need to begin thinking early around carbon emission verification, quantification and verification, which is a big problem faced by the household market. And because of the lack of better verification methods, carbon financing has not achieved its best impact in the household level because of many reasons. And one of them is double accounting of the carbon credits, because it's very hard to quantify and specifically say like you have reduced X number of carbon emissions. So schools are easier to do this because they can be measurable easily using technology. And so this is something also we need to bring forth as a way to introduce technology in this space, which can be able to excite stakeholders and even allow carbon financing to flow into this space. Yeah. Lastly, is carbon financing. The reason why, as I mentioned, these schools we are targeting, they can't afford these innovations. But at the same time, these schools, they really deserve these innovations. So carbon financing really will come hand in hand to really target these vulnerable communities, to bridge these gaps of inequalities of these innovations. And that's why centering our conversations around leaving these schools behind, one aspect of not leaving them behind is ensuring that we can be able to capitalize on this carbon financing, using technology, using data. We verify this information to ensure that all these schools can be able to be supported to make savings from their cooking, to provide free food for their students, and also to ensure that they can be supported to upgrade their learning facilities. And because of that, education now can be accessed and their students can compete favorably with their urban counterparts in that regards. Yeah, thank you very much. That was my long, short presentation around what we're trying to do. And hopefully we have excited a conversation or provoked some thoughts around this space and around what can be done to bring more attention, most particularly bring more innovations to serve the students. Poverty levels in their communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. ABUGA. That was super elaborate. And also because I'm hearing about ECOBORA in detail for the first time, I must say that I'm really impressed by the work you are doing, especially through what you're doing, you're already reducing the impacts of CO2 and climate change, as well as when it comes to health as well, especially of these local schools that tend to use firewood to fuel, or rather to cook for their schools. So that is really, really inspiring to hear. And also just to mention that the kind of impact you've already achieved in terms of the number of projects, also promoting, saving of these, saving money, which can be used to build libraries, to build computers, to buy books for learners, and also reducing this dropout rate by 75%. That is quite impressive. As you know, that is a common problem here in Kenya, where we find most of our learners, especially girls, who are really, really affected by these dynamics. When they go get firewood along the way, they could get raped. Just to mention a few of the disasters that strike them on their way for that. So that is really, really keen to see, promoting a bright future for the African child and really changing the narrative around clean cooking in our schools and institutionalizing clean cooking for that matter. But also really important to mention how much we are tackling the problem of deforestation in the country, because we get this firewood cutting down our trees, and that has more impacts when it comes to the rainfall distribution. It affects agriculture, and that is just to mention a few. Thank you so much for that. And I think this is a green innovation that is, I believe, is also creating jobs. And we are planning a side event on the Africa Climate Week around green jobs, green solutions by the youth. And it is really nice to hear these projects that young people are undertaking, which are also tackling the problem of unemployment in Kenya, but also in Africa. As I tend to believe that African problems are not homogeneous, but then they are somewhat related. I believe our fellows from West Africa, Southern Africa, and the Francophone will also be able to attest to that. So thank you so much, Justin, for that presentation. At this point, I would like to open for discussion and really looking to have our participants share their experiences, but also give comments with regards to your presentation. I mentioned also, thank you so much for providing real-time statistics. As researchers, we believe in evidence. If you say you are solving a problem, we want to see where were we last time and where are we today? So how did we get there? So thank you so much. Emily Bolo, our clean energy specialist, is in the call today, and I would like to give her a chance to say a thing or two, even as I keep an eye in the chat for any questions and comments from our participants. Emily, please feel free to come in at this point.
Thanks, Juliet, for the opportunity, and thanks, Justin, for the good work you're doing at the institutional level. I don't have much of a question, but just to applaud you for the good work you are doing. Yeah, it's astonishing to hear that we have like 400,000 schools in Kenya, and the amount they spend on fuel and the amount of CO2 that is emitted in the process. We have focused so much on households, and we have neglected the institutions, which when compared to households, I can say emit much more emissions to the atmosphere, and that's the need to act and to give this issue the urgency it deserves. I will just want to point out one thing. I met with a lady who is promoting the SEMA, institutional cooking in schools, but her case was quite different because the students in the school had to be recalled from class at around 11 a.m. while she was teaching to go for firewood. And she thought that was an exercise that could take at least like 30 minutes, but to her surprise, the students came like 2 hours later, yani from 11 to 1. And to me, during that time, there was no learning that was going on because they were out there collecting food. So apart from the emissions, you can see those living in rural areas are disadvantaged because the time that they could have spent studying, their parents have sent them to school knowing that they are studying, but part of that time that they should have used studying is spent having to collect firewood on a daily basis so that they can have food on the table. And this is a very important issue because if we talk about leaving no one behind, and you find that such students are disadvantaged, and having to compare their performance with children in urban areas becomes unrealistic because they might have, their performance might not be as compelling as those in urban areas because of such hitches, which makes them forgo time that they should have spent learning, collecting firewood. So mine is to encourage us as partners in this field to really advocate for the transition of the use of biomass to these clean and alternative forms of energy, because there are so many benefits associated with it beyond the emissions, beyond the health aspects, and beyond education. So I think we need to do much more, and I applaud ABUGA for the good work they're doing. And I know we can work with partners to ensure that we scale up this technology far and wide, not just in one school or school in one region, but all over the country. Thank you so much, and back to you, Juliet.
Thank you so much, Emily, for that elaborate kind of presentation, and also giving us an example of another innovation that you encountered some time back. So at this point, I already see questions in our chat, and I'm really not happy to read the questions because we prefer to have a discussive kind of platform. So I just want to check with everyone who has written their questions down, is anyone able to unmute themselves or rather just give a reaction so that I can allow them to speak? Unless you are in a very crowded place that is noisy, I am happy to read, but then we really love to hear your voice. So let me just check for a few minutes if anyone is able to unmute.
I've unmuted.
Yes, I can see Dr. Tom, please go ahead.
Thank you, the chair, for the session. And thank you for Justin from ECOBORA. This is a game-changing technology with the a very high potential to address climate change. So have you tried to calculate maybe the payback period for various categories? Because this is critical when you are selling the idea to decision makers.
Thank you so much, Dr. So, Mr. ABUGA, I'll give you the second question so that you tackle 2 questions at a time. The other question is from Mr. Kigweru Stephen, and is asking, what is the cost of savings per meal in a school setting?
Thank you for the questions. Dr. Tom, to your question. So what I didn't mention now in terms of the cost of the product and the payback is initially we were selling the infrastructure to the schools. And this became a problem because therefore the affordability, right? And so because of that, we're no longer selling the infrastructure. What we do, we're only selling the cooking energy to the schools. So being supported by those sensors, schools on the beginning of the academic term, they make a down payment. And on average, we're collecting $200 per academic term on average to be able to open up the system for the school to use. So that's how we are doing. Rather than selling the hardware, which I know is very expensive and very capital intensive. So we are only charging for the energy using those smart IoT sensors we got. And this, on average, we collected from $200 per academic term per school for using this innovation. And payback, depending on the school, payback to ECOBORA now for the cost of the infrastructure goes from 16 months to 3 years to be able to break even in terms of the cost of these units. Then from the 3rd year of the 16th month, be able to now begin getting benefits in terms of profit. Having said that, we have like an annual maintenance fee, like $1,000, which is like another add-on cost on this innovation, which included gives us those 16 months to 3 years of payback. Then there's another question around the size of the boilers. So this depends on the energy needs of the school, the solar radiation, location, energy needs, type of food. All these factors will determine the size of your stove, right? Yep, and that's why now then the price of the energies you'll be able to pay to ECOBORA. So basically that's how we structure ourselves. Lastly, around the meal savings. So we have not been able to do a research around the cost of saving per meal. Maybe that's another learning gap or opportunity there. But what we have done is the firewood saving cost per meal, and that we got it at 90%. So basically that's where we stand at in terms of meal savings. Juliet, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin, for that. I see another question from Danson, and I just want to check with you, Danson, if you're able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Juliet. Danson here.
Hi, Danson. Yeah, I can hear you.
How are you?
Hi, thank you. Good to have you.
Good. Good work from Justin. I know him and I know the kind of work he's doing. I just wanted to encourage him to consider our hospitals, factories. There are a number of factories that are using a lot of firewood. I know them. I've visited them, and also even hotels. A number of hotels, they are finishing our Kakamega forest here. Let them also think of it and diversify, not just schools, even technical institutions. The easy innovation is one of the best that will come in so handy. I'm glad that we have somebody at least to have considered looking at institutions. We have had so much consideration on the households, just as Amy said it. Now it's good that we diversify and look at institutions as well. Sorry, I'm in a supermarket, so was just on my way and saw this. It's so interesting. Keep on the good work, my friend. Thanks.
Thank you, Danson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danson. So there's another question from Kericho and Dr. Marie. Really happy to have Dr. Marie as well. She's really, we work with her at ARIN on a number of projects. So I'd like to allow her to ask the question, and then I'll go ahead and read the questions in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much, Juliet. For everybody, once again, I'm Maria Nantongo, and I'm in Uganda. I'm really happy to be on this platform and very happy to hear from you, Justine, on your very interesting innovation and solution that's really dealing with the problems that we are trying as researchers every day to understand. So it was very interesting to me when Juliet mentioned the topic. I was like, oh my, I have to come in and just listen, especially because as we, the researchers, many times we are not very much connected with the private sector. And yet a lot of the solutions and innovations have to be pushed through the private sector. So it's quite important, and I really appreciate ARIN for inviting you to speak to us today. So that aside, by the way, did I say where I'm? So yeah, this is a topic that we are very interested in, like I was saying. We just finished writing a research project trying to understand the lead that you're talking about. And from a little bit of what we see or know is that there's a lot of work that has gone into trying to promote clean energy, as we all know. Almost for about 40 years, beginning around the 1980s, there's been solutions to try and solve this particular issue, but we've not been successful, not just in Kenya or Uganda, but in many developing countries. And Justine, you being in the field, you probably know this much better than most of us. So as we are doing our research or trying to write this project that I was talking about, we are now trying to understand what are the reasons. There's a lot of research that has gone into trying to understand why are people not adopting clean energy. And many of the reasons that come up so far have been very technical, from, okay, what's the efficiency of the stove? How much would it save in terms of carbon emissions? In terms of health, for example, how much particulate matter, would, how much protection would people have? And then apart from the technical perspectives or the scientific perspectives, there's been understanding from the economic side. So things like, what does it cost, the price? Is it affordable? Are the markets working well? What is the value chain, and things like this. And again, from your presentation, I noticed that you have really articulated these issues of what do we get out of it? What's the technical specification and how does it work in comparison to, for example, the traditional boilers that you presented to us. Now, and this I want to understand from you, Justine. What we don't see very much in the research is trying to understand, and we think partly that this might be part of the problem. The fact that we don't really try to build these innovations from the bottom up in terms of understanding exactly what are the problems of the users and what are their priorities. Therefore, how do we integrate those needs into not just the design, but the entire infrastructure around marketing, promotion, of the stoves and any other innovations that we have? So that's one. And I want to know from you, Justine, what are you doing about that? Secondly, it seems like in trying to understand the problem, there is a compartmentalization of the issue where you look, for example, at the clean energy stoves, or clean cooking solutions, like I was saying, as a technical issue, when in fact issues are very much interlinked and interrelated. So for example, the economics is very much interlinked with the technical side, which those two parts, like I said, there's been a lot of research on them. But other than that, there is also political issues, there is also social cultural things, and all of these are interlinked somehow to create the problem. So if I might give an example, when you're trying to promote clean cooking solution in the community, and I will talk about households because that's where most of the research has come from. And you try to solve their problem, you give them a cooking solution which prevents deforestation. So you're solving the environmental issue. And then maybe you try to provide them with financing. So you're trying to solve maybe the economic problem there. And let's say you maybe give them training or something about how to use the stove. Now, at the end of the day, the other issues that are interlinked with that you're probably not looking at is if the government, through the politics now, is putting in place the infrastructure to ensure that the communities from the bottom up have everything that they need to be able to adopt this solution. So it means that apart from understanding the technical and the economics, like I was saying, you need to understand the whole thing around. And this is not easy because we are used, like, at least in my department, we have very simple abstract models that we rely on. So coming back now to you, Justin, what do you think about what I'm talking about? Does it make sense from a private sector's perspective? Is this something as researchers that we should continue to explore? Would it add value to what you're trying to do? And then finally, I wish I had come to this presentation before we wrote this, because you had questions there, which are the things that you want to understand as the private sector. So these are things perhaps that we could have included, but we didn't, some of them. Yeah, but I just want to bring it out to you so that I understand if this makes sense and that perspective of the end users' perspectives and whether you're including that in your business models and how. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Marie. So Justin, I would like to welcome you immediately.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the good points and intriguing questions you have posted right there. Yeah, as I mentioned, we are a private organization, and frankly speaking, our research is not our fault, But one thing we have tried to do, and we're trying to do, we still keep on trying to do, is to become a customer-centric business. And by that I mean we're trying to really understand the needs of these individual schools in terms of why haven't they upgraded their boilers? Why do they cook what they cook? What do they cook? Just for us really to understand from that perspective. And just to mention, we have been doing this since 2017 in terms of doing the R&Ds, trying to talk to more schools. We've gone to schools in western parts of Kenya, coast, eastern, even eastern, central, to understand really those variations, the needs of these schools, right? Yeah, so that's something we intend to do in a better scale to try to build customer-centric solutions, because as you mentioned, between technology and the cost, there's really a huge gap. And one way to solve that is, I think, is through really trying to understand these customers. And although their needs and their aspirations keeps on changing, But I think we're trying to do that, but hopefully that's something to learn from these all of us, is to try really to keep on understanding these customers and understand their changing needs, which I think is really, really key. Like, just to mention to you, one thing I was surprised across all these schools, if you talk to the school principals, you'll be surprised. All they want to do is to provide food in a very cheap manner to students. They don't care whether you're using firewood, they don't care about the environment, they don't care whether it's biogas or LPG, as long as you can do it faster and very cheap and convenient, and you have a conversation with them, right? But again, other issues, as you mentioned, the compartmentalization from the economics, the culture, yeah. But again, at what cost now does this happen? You find that a school has been having a kitchen for like 4 or 5 years, 10 years. So how do you go there and upgrade the kitchen? At whose cost? Of course, not at the school's cost, right? So how do we really try to bring in innovations? Because the existing infrastructure do not support the better or the new innovations. How do we really involve the communities bring the hands to this kind of projects? Yeah, so, but yeah, I think it's a difficult issue to find a balance in these intertwined issues, economics, technology, culture, social, and political issues. All these really come together to give us what we call is a kitchen, which is using firewood, and then it's all trying to find out ways to try and ensure these customers can be able to own up the solution. So if they're going to be able to really be the one who are seeing the benefits on it, they can easily be able to champion for it and help you navigate the political, social, and cultural issues. So I think it's more of trying to make them really see the bigger picture and really making them involved from the word go, from the designing, from the questionnaires, from the testing, from the training, in post-installation support. More of like building a long-lasting relationships, I think allows to mediate these issues which can arise politically, culturally, or economic-wise in these solutions. Right.
Thank you so much, Justin. Now there's another question from Kericho. I don't know who Kericho is, but Kericho is saying he's joined later. The forest cover is, I think this is more of a comment. The forest cover is diminished soon, and there will be no place to collect firewood. That's really true, but thanks to the innovations such as ECOBORA. So there's another question from Redmi 19. This is a device. He says that the prices appears to be quite high for small public schools in Kenya. So I think that's a reaction. Justin, would you like to explain that, or do you have any comment to that reaction? He thinks that the prices appear to be too high for the small schools in Kenya.
Yeah, thanks, Juliet. Thanks for the question. Yeah, as I mentioned, the reality is with innovations comes a price. With solar innovation comes a price, honestly. And with a very quality solar innovation comes a more bigger price. And that's the reality of the challenges we as a business we are facing. How do we ensure that we can scale up? And yet at the same time, we have a very priced innovation over here. So yeah, that's a very legitimate concern we have. And that's why, number one, we began selling these boilers, which we failed very terribly. Because a school could buy, make the first deposit, and then after the first deposit, they could drop out from the payments, right? So this meant that as a ECOBORA, we didn't have a sustainable way of growing up, right? After 2 years now, we changed from selling the boiler when we discovered that the schools only care about what they care about cooking food in a very efficient and cheap manner. So that's why we moved towards offering energy as a service. So the school only pays for amount of energy they're spending per week or per month, but most of them they pay per academic term. So they don't need to worry about maintenance, installation, and owning this infrastructure. And for us, this seems to be the best solution for the customers, although the business is a capital headache on our side because we need a lot of upfront capital. There's a huge risk to put out infrastructure, which takes between 16 months and 3 years for return of investment, right? But as I shared in this screen, again, I'm resharing. Although solar energy, although these innovations are very expensive, from my experience, we think hybridization will be the key towards sustainability and accessing these innovations. As I mentioned, one key thing, bearing in mind, one school can reduce up to 80 tons of CO2 per year. So bearing that in mind, we can be able to leverage on carbon credits. These carbon credits can be able to be hybridized in terms of the financing model, together with the school funding. Here comes the community participation. The community also must own up, must put in something forth for these innovations. So combining carbon credits, the school funding, because some schools, most of them actually, they have annual budgets for purchasing firewood. That money of purchasing firewood could go towards the down payment for these innovations. So yeah, we need to blend in carbon credits, the school themselves, and lastly, rely on RBFs, research-based financing. All these smart financing mechanisms, I think, can give us sustainable drive towards growth and towards impact. Because the reality is this green energy is coming at a cost, and someone has to take it. And in this case, it's not the customer. That's why we need to get smart a little bit here to try and blend in all these available financing mechanisms to ensure we can grow beyond region, as Emil was trying to mention, even go towards other parts of African regions.
Thank you so much, Justin. So there's another comment and question from Mr. Charles Tunui from the ARI network, and he says, private actors in polycentric governance acknowledge that governance is not governance. However, it encompasses private as well as public actors, and those private agents include GHG emitters, non-governmental organizations, social groups of concerned citizens, even families who might decide to install solar systems at their homes and either take steps to minimize their carbon footprints. And that is a quote referenced to Cole 2011. So the question is, how are families and schools in your pilot area involved in governance of clean energy cooking, and as decision makers or as decision-making centers?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So with these schools, we see them as partners, less as the beneficiaries. Why I mentioned that is because we've tried to involve them at our level best, as I mentioned. Before installing this solution in our school, the first step is visiting the school and doing just like a more of an introduction, meeting the school, understanding the school, the students, the community, and even the school cooks. So building a rapport is very, very key, and to understand the needs and the skills availability in these communities. And so when we install this solution, the community comes in place, we train them to support us with the installation. This is very effective in terms of scaling up, but also it also provides participation by the community, right? And this makes the community really take ownership of the success of such an installation or demonstration in their school. Yeah, so we are trying to involve these communities, and even beyond post-installation, we offer employment to 2 people from these communities, and their work basically is just to ensure, provide us with basic maintenance of this system. When I say maintenance, I just mean being a clear glass of a panel. Once in a while, somebody has to clean it from dust, twigs, just giving the basic maintenance. So by just giving simple jobs like those, I think is a way we're trying to involve these communities, right? At the same time, we're also very aware that with the benefits which comes from carbon financing, there's a share between ECOBORA and the school. right? There's a share of ECOBORA in the school in terms of the carbon credits generated. The reason could be because not the school, most schools can't pay for this. There's an agreement whereby some of the credits goes to pay for the installation cost of these gadgets, but some of them goes towards development of this school. So I think those are the big way and small ways we're trying to really ensure these schools really take ownership of these solutions, but also no longer becomes beneficiary, but also become collaborators while deploying these energy solutions. Yeah, Juliet, was there a second one?
Yes, there is from Sami Jamar. Sami, are you able to speak? Let me just check with him. But if not, Sami, okay, couple seconds to see. All right, I think he's not able to speak, but yeah.
I've seen the question. It's around scalability.
Yeah, potential for, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's a big potential for scalability. As I mentioned, ECOBORA right now, our low-hanging fruits at the schools. Just to mention now, we have hospitals, we have food processing factories, we have tea factories, coffee factories, drying factories. We have government facilities like, barracks, universities, just to name a few of those spaces. So yeah, in terms of a market need, there's a huge market need for these solutions. Potential for scaling up, the potential is very big, just to mention some. But again, for better scaling, I think for sure there must be partnership. Public-private partnership, I think, seems to be the easiest way to give people, private people, companies like ourselves, a space to leverage on the incentives, policies, or facilities available offered by the government to be able to scale up and introduce this to their own institutions, just to say the least. Yeah, so the challenge comes here, how to develop those partnerships, how to sustain them, and how to make them work towards serving these specific needs. Yeah, but I do acknowledge that's a route, but the problem is it's a challenging route, setting that vehicle in place to ensure this vehicle is really well articulated with policies, right policies, right action plans, and clear expectations from involved parties. I think that's is the challenge, but whenever that's done, I think this will spur innovations, not only from ECOBORA, from other players to these spaces, and even promote uptake of these innovations. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Justin. So I think we have a final question from Dr. Mary, and it's about hybrid financing mechanisms, which present a big opportunity. So she wants to know whether ECOBORA has started piloting with carbon credits and RBF financing with some schools, and if so, has it worked?
Yeah, that's a good question, Maria. So yes and no. So what we've done before, we've done a pilot under carbon credits, an independent one. We've done an independent pilot under an RBF. We've never done a hybrid one. So while we're doing all these independent pilots, was when we go to a school, the school is unable to pay. We found an RBF partner who came in, so that was factored in, right? So, but during these individual strategies, we found out like there's no sustainability for this to grow, scalable, and be sustainable. We need carbon coming in. We also needed the school itself, the community, bring in the effort, the resources for their time to ensure these technologies roll out. Yeah, so it's something we are keen to do in terms of like testing, like for example, in one school, combine getting an RBF partner ready a carbon credit, of course, and a school. So we're yet to do this, but this is something we're really keen to do to see whether we can be able to reduce the time of payback period, even reduce the cost, and even maybe see whether it's an easy scalable vehicle to scale up. Yeah, so we are keen to do this, although we have learned from the individual independent financing mechanisms, like it takes time to get the payback, and also it's not sustainable. And that's why we came to the agreement that you need to depend on those three finances to grow. Because as you might know, like in the Kenyan market, most of the biggest household cookstove providers, 70% of their revenues is carbon financing. And that's why they've been able to be successful in what they do. So this gives us an pointer like why carbon finance is key, but also why also community involvement and also hybridizing these methodologies of financing can solve problems more so in targeting those communities which are really considered risky by technology providers. Maria.
Thank you so much, Justin. I think I saw Mr. Kirimi's hand up. Would you like to speak, Crispus?
Good evening, all of you. So,
good evening.
I mentioned because I work in the ASAL areas of Kenya, which is something I'm very passionate about because of this project's people before profit. And so one of the areas that you're working with is schools, as I mentioned. We have identified schools in Kitui and very ASAL areas, Samburu, Turkana, and the rest. And so basically we deal with the Gamma Rabbit value chain, which deals with specifically Acacia Senegal trees. A lot of the problems we've been having is with regards to Prosopis flora, which is basically a Makengo tree. And so one of the innovations that we've identified is planting trees with partners like WRA and the rest, planting trees in these trees. And one of the things that I'm keen about pushing is product currencies in these communities, in this ASAL community, whereby, for example, a school or a community will not necessarily have to give out money to you, for example, as an investor, but instead the trees that will be planted in these schools, the Acacia Senegals produce gum. So instead of a school giving you money, you can just take the gum from the schools and then pay you in cash. So the school does not necessarily have to go back into its cash pockets. So basically use the natural resources that you have. So maybe moving forward, this is something you'll consider partnering with other organizations, such that schools do not necessarily have to give you money. You can just utilize the resources that they have within them, and then the project continues running without having anyone running into any cash flow problems. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So from my side, you are not quite audible, but I don't know if Justin, you managed to pick anything from what he said.
I only got the last bits around leveraging on partnerships, though the latter part was quite not audible.
Sorry, Justin, I can't hear you as well.
Sorry, can you now hear me?
I don't know if you're muted or something, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm not muted. Any change, any? Hey, Juliet.
All right, you can hear you well.
Oh, sorry, I was saying I only got the latter part where I was mentioning around leveraging on partnerships and taking away the burden of schools paying. Though the first few seconds of his question or comment wasn't audible. Hey, Juliet, did I lose you or?
Hi, Justin. She dropped because our internet was having issues, but she's rejoining.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I was mentioning maybe Crispus could repeat if he doesn't mind, if time allows also, because I didn't get the initial part of his presentation.
Okay. He can repeat, yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me now.
Yes, I can, Crispus.
Okay, so I was saying that, first of all, congratulations on working with the assault. This is something that I'm very passionate about and currently undertaking a few projects around those areas. Basically, I deal with my organization within the gamma Arabic value chain. So because you understand that Acacia Senegal trees are very profitable to these communities in the assets. And so one of the projects that we are undertaking is trying to plant Acacia Senegal trees. Of course, one of the other interventions that you are making is first harnessing the Prosopis juniflora matenge tree from these communities because of the effects that they have. But then what we are doing is replacing them with Acacia Senegal trees. So these trees produce gamma arabic, which the community of the schools, we take from the schools. So one of the issues that I've been having when talking to partners is we need to come up with projects that basically leverage on product currency. Whereby, for example, within these schools that have this gamma arabic, and then for you as a partner dealing with the energy sector, you do not necessarily need to have the school pay for that product in cash. We can just take the gamma arabic from this from the trees that grow within these schools and then pay you. So you find a situation where you're partnering with organizations in such a way that a school does not have to go back to its cash flows to enjoy some of the benefits that you're giving to them. So maybe these are some of the things that maybe as you grow into the future you will consider. Partnering, utilizing the aspect of product currencies so that communities will not necessarily have to go back into their pockets to enjoy the products that you are offering. Thank you.
Thank you, Crispus. I think that's a good comment. Maybe we might touch base later for me to learn more on how to leverage on that.
Thank you so much, Crispus and Justin. We do not have any more questions. And at this point, just want to firstly, thank you so much, Justin, for your presentation, and to thank our participants for making it to today's call. So from the Africa Research and Impact Network side, Mr. Tonui Charles will be giving his final comments, and then we'll have our virtual selfie before we finally close the meeting.
And maybe, Juliet, we have Selvi first, so that when I conclude, then we can break. Hello?
All right, that's okay, Charles. So ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I want to welcome all of us to our virtual selfie, which is the Arin culture. So I would like to request that we all turn on our cameras, and our media team are led by Washington. We will be taking a selfie on behalf of the Arin team. As we do, I just want to say also thank you so much to Dr. Joseph Job, who is interpreting our session every Friday. It's only an honor to have you, Dr. Job, and not to take it for granted. Thank you so much for facilitating the services to our Francophone. And to our Francophone, we also want to say thank you so much. We try as much as possible to ensure that we also have some reviews in French like we did last week. So be encouraged, and you should always book a slot with me if you'd like to make a presentation. Right, so that being said, I'll request that we all smile, and the active will take a virtual selfie. So 1, 2, and 3.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think it was a go-ahead from Washington that he's all done. So thank you so much and welcome, Charles. Immediately after Charles concludes his remarks, we'll welcome you to exit at your own pleasure, and let's meet again on Friday, same time, same place. I have been your moderator, Juliet Oloch, and I am the ARIN Fellowship Manager. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Juliet, and thank you, Justin, and the delegates present. I don't want to repeat, especially the key messages which have been discussed, but what two things stood out, which Dr. Mary Nantongo from Uganda raised, that there is need to incorporate especially the users in contribution in the development and innovation of clean cooking systems. So as part of the enabler for adoption across the region, and especially at the household level and at the individual level. Secondly, Justin brought out especially the private sector perspective, and for those who are following the African Climate Week and African Summit discussions, private sector is being brought on board very strongly, and also towards the United Nations framework for climate change. That is the Conference of Parties 28, which is happening, scheduled to happen in Dubai. This will be the first time that the private sector will be having a very strong and elaborate session. So what Justin really brought out very strongly is that they are treating the schools and families that they're engaging with as partners, not just as recipients. And that is very critical in terms of appreciating them in the governance of clean energy cooking systems. Because from what I shared, Cole and other authors, including Elena Ostrom, Vincent Ostrom, when they discuss a concept on polycentric governance or polycentricity, is where individuals and networks and households also they can become part of decision-making centers or decision makers in the governance of such a sector. So it will be very important to for research and to work very strongly with the private sector-led processes as we really move forward towards achieving the universal access to clean energy, and especially in the African context. So thank you very much. As Justin, you're preparing for the African Climate Week, let's produce key positions for that, and also preparation for the global negotiations on climate change, where you have brought out very strongly the role that you are playing in carbon credit or in sequestering the carbon in the ecosystem and reducing pollution. So that is a very good contribution to fighting impacts of climate change and reducing loss and damage. Thank you very much, and we wish all the best as on behalf of the Executive Director of the Africa Research and Impact Network. We look forward to engage with you very vibrantly, and especially in our context, so that we can really strengthen our Global South leadership in research and co-generating evidence for policy discussions and practice, and shaping our policies to really transition our economies to sustainable development. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
And bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
you. Okay, bye from Kakamega.
Thank you, Danson. Bye. And those who'd like to speak with Justin, please, you can pick his contacts from the chat.
Okay, good.